Usually to kick these things off. Guys, thanks very much for giving up your time. We had some Wi-Fi problems on our end on the short hop across the sea there, so fingers crossed we'll be okay. We're really happy to be here. Myself and Dan both from Rugby Academy Ireland in Kildare in Ireland. I'm going to let Dan, give a quick introduction to sort of who we are and what we do. We're really excited to be here. As Sam said, we love to be challenged. That's how myself and Sam and Dan all got connected. We challenge each other the whole way through that first period of lockdown, and we love to, anywhere we can add value or answer questions, we really want to. So anywhere you have somewhere you'd like to give your opinion on a clip or on a point, or challenge us or ask a question, and the more interaction here, the more we can get out of it, and we really enjoy it the more that we interact. So Dan, I'll flick across if you maybe want to give a quick introduction maybe to who we are and what we do in Killashee.
Yeah, welcome to everybody. Thanks for having us. Really appreciate your time that you're going to spend with us tonight. The first thing that I want to say is, look, the one thing about rugby, there's no right or wrong. This is probably our beliefs, and believe strongly in them, but that doesn't say that it's correct. Challenge you or make you think a little bit more about backline play, because the backs are the clever guys and the forwards are just winners the ball. So there goes a bit of more thought into it. But just background about myself, I've been in Ireland for 20 years, worked in coach development and player development, and then about 3 years ago decided to open up own academy, as I saw a lot of players not getting opportunity for whatever reason in selection, whether that was injury or didn't. We want to give them a second chance and then give them a full academy program for the year. So been involved in coach education and player development for roughly 16 years, and so on. So hopefully we can share some good thoughts with you tonight.
Absolutely. Look, as Dan said, I'm not. You sent this out before, and like I said to Sam, the pictures probably shouldn't have been there because we both have faces for radio. But just to sort of give you a heads up on who we are, like Dan said, especially myself, don't consider myself to be an expert on any of this. I'm just here to share a few views, and like I said, as we move through, we're going to cover as many areas as we can. Dan will look mostly at the attacking side of things. I'll look maybe more at the defensive side, and that's sort of our coaching pedigree, the two of us. And we'll move through the content. We'll try and get through as many different areas as we can, off all different set pieces and core principles and decision making. So whenever you want to jump in, ask a question, go through Sam, and I'm sure he'll be happy to moderate that for you. Again, I'm hoping that the Wi-Fi doesn't break up, but we put in just at the start, because I know there's Dan explains it quite well in terms of what we do. There's a 45-second clip that just sort of shows what we do on a daily basis in Killashee, just to give you a feel for what we do before we click in. So hopefully it works. If it doesn't, I'll send it across to Sam, and I'm sure you can distribute it out if anyone wants to know a little bit more about us and the things at the end. We are the future. Oh, Jesus. There we go. We are the future. Someday, we're gonna rule the world. I know, someday, we're gonna rule the world. Counting down to explosion. I hear the moment approaching. Someday, we're gonna rule the So again, I hope that didn't break up too much. It's probably the last time we'll play things through at full speed. But again, it just gives you an idea of who we are, because obviously a lot of the coaches you would have worked with before presented to are sort of Dublin-based or Irish-based. So hopefully that gives you at least a bit of an idea of what we do and what we're about. So enough about us. Dan, I'm going to make it very clear. I'm going to take much more of a back seat than Dan this evening and let him shine at what he does best. So Dan, I'll direct the first bit at you. I mean, what we wanted to start with was the real importance as we go through this, and whether you're a player or a coach, is understanding what you want to achieve in backline play. So that was what we wanted to start with tonight.
Yeah, no, look, and again, more normally quite interactive, and I'll ask questions normally in presentations, but obviously tonight we're going to give you info and then just write down your questions and put it to Sam, and we gladly answer it. So desired outcomes of play, for me, it's always to score. And that's probably the one thing about Six Nations rugby at the moment and professional game at the moment. It's almost that a lot of sides get the set play going to get into phase play. Like how many times do you see scrum after 12, just take it up? And that's because of all the system plays that's around at the moment, 3-3-3 or 3-3-1, 2-4-2, all of different systems. But for me, still, you look to score. Play to get over the gain line then is probably silver medal, positive tackle line, and we'll explain the difference for those that don't know between gain line and tackle line. Play to provide continuity by retaining possession, and then disorganize the defense is sort of the areas that we look at. So if we don't score, for me, it's the one place bar the scrum where you've got a one-on-one with your I think you'll agree, you either have a 6v4 or a 6v3 or 5v3 situation in backline play. And pet hate of mine is that people don't use that enough. So for me, it's a big opportunity to score. So that's our desired outcome of tackle line.
Yeah. So we'll go through some more detail now, but one thing to maybe consider as we go through is what's naturally going to happen if you're a coach or a player. You're going to start thinking about those plays as we work through the evening. It's a good thing to maybe think as those plays come back to you and as those strikes come back to you, where do you rank all of those on that list? So how many of your plays are designed to score? How many are designed to get gain line? And is there maybe somewhere we need to look at that in terms of shifting the focus for our playbook? Dan, this is where we wanted to sort of briefly explain the difference between the tackle line and the gain line. So just really slowly, we're actually going to look at this clip later. I'm just going to drag it through nice and slowly. So again, there does be issues with the Wi-Fi, so we don't really play a lot of them through at full speed. But just take a point of reference. So the tackle occurs there just past the 10. Okay, a play through one just past the 10. The play originates here on the green. So just have a think yourself what the difference between the tackle line and the gain line would be. Okay, how's that looking for you there, Dan? Okay, I'll try the Wi-Fi. All looking good, Sam, yeah.
It is lagging a little bit, but we'll get the message across.
Get there. Right, Dan, off you go. So that's just a really good visualization here of what we're illustrating for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, so as you can see, the scrum is there. So the red line is obviously at the in the middle of the scrum. That's what we want to get over. The tackle line then is the defensive coach would like the tackle line, as you watch your screen, to be on the right-hand side of that red line. Any attacking coach would like it to be at the moment. And then the continuity of play is when we get through, when we actually make a line break or we're happy with our attack, is when we achieve green or further.
So again, I'll illustrate later as we go on that for me, pictures like these from a coaching perspective, those still images are really easy ways to explain to our players what we're aiming for. Red being our gain line, defensively we want to be on the right hand side of it, and attack want to be on the left hand side, and then green is where that play finished up. So that's our target line. Where do we want to get to as a minimum? So again, still pictures, easy way to illustrate our goals and our targets, which we just spoke about. Dan, this is the other thing that will underpin everything that we look at moving forward. So we'll look at a lot of detail and a lot of attacking principles, but the decision-making process underpins all of this for you.
And that's why I'm not a fan of pre-prescribed plays. I'll have a setup, and then within that setup, there'll be 3 or 4 Some moves will, or some backline attack will be designed where the 10 is the decision maker. Some will be where the 12 is the decision maker, or the 13. 8, 9 plays that your 9 is your decision maker. So if you come up against a side, or you know a little bit about them, you know they've got a poor defender as a 10, you'll design a play where your 10 is going to be your decision maker, or you might play 8, 9 with 9 running onto him. If they are weak 13, well, then we want to get the ball into 13's hands as quick as we can and have a play designed that 13 becomes the decision maker. So, and through that is the decision-making process. So the first thing is identify the defense positioning. Are they, and please tell me if I go too far, but there might be 3 up defense, 4 up defense, or 5 up defense against you. The alignment, how can we, with our own alignment, how can we manipulate the defense? How do we then communicate best advantage? So I've identified where how the defense is positioned. We have an alignment in our attack. Which option can we use, and then attack accordingly and react in the moment. So this will make more sense to you as we go through and as we talk through it.
Fantastic. Again, now a lot of these you might recognize, you know, from a coaching course point of view. A lot of these will come in your sort of your stage 2, your stage 3 coaching courses. But one thing that we always reinforce is, as we go through detail, we can have all the detail in the world around our angles of running, or our pace onto the ball, or our catch pass skills. But if we don't have our decision making right, and we don't understand how to communicate that best advantage or react when we're in front of a defense, we're going to come down, we're going to fall apart at the seams there. The other thing that underpins that is we're going to look at 2 more areas of space on the pitch, and we look at key factors. So Dan, this is another one, just it's almost as well a key part of communicating best advantage.
Yes, within that, that's the areas of space. We always ask players, where is the space? And then they always say, if you say, what are you looking for? They say, I'm looking for space. But then if you find where is the space, they umming and ahhing. They can't come up with an answer. So that's just a quick picture to show you how many different. So scrum on the left-hand side, there's obviously a short side that we can attack. Depending where they winger defense, does he defend close to the scrum, or does he defend airspace, interior, through? If they align wide, we go through them. If they align narrow, we go around them. And then one that people always forget is the linear space, the space between the attacking line and the defensive line. How can I play around using that space? That differs from whether you or whether you have a line or whether you play off a ruck.
Okay, and that again, like for me, there, a big point is that will have a big influence on the communication from 12 and 13. So I know this is speaking on an attacking point, but just we'll talk about positional roles as we move through. But the guys in the wide channel, again, you're looking at a left-hand side scrum there. If we're talking about fullbacks or right-hand side wingers, open side wingers, scanning those 6 areas of space in front and communicating that in gives the info to the 10, 12, 13 that we need to make good decisions. So there's a big onus on our outside backs to communicate those spaces. We looked at a webinar with the current attack coach, myself and Dan, unsure on his abilities, but the current Ireland attack coach talked about how he gives a process to his players on which area they check in a row. So can you look and say, off a left-hand side scrum, what 4 areas do I want to look at in a row for space? So I might look short side, deep short side, backfield, and then look in front. Do I want to check interior through the middle or out the wide channel? And that's all going to depend on what you want to achieve from your strike. So it's a good piece of information to consider when we're looking at what roles and responsibilities we place on each position in our backline on those strike plays. So Dan, hopefully your Wi-Fi doesn't wake up too much. This is the first time it's happened for us. But if you want to sort of bring us through these are really important parts and probably some of the most technical parts.
Yeah, guys, and it's going to be, we can reflect back on it after we some of the backline attack videos that we're going to show you. But those are the key factors, like anything, 10 key factors. Just like that, backline attack as a unit has got key factors. Adequate depth and width. That was for me, and not necessarily that you have to stand deep to be deep. Depth means that we can play really flat as well. Correct angles of running, unders, overs, or slider, or different terminology again, or switch plays. Correct angles of running, which very speed of running. When do I accelerate onto the ball, and when do I decelerate to be able to hold my feet and be effective when I get the ball? Timing and accuracy of passing. Most frustrating, certainly for me as a coach, is poor pass or a forward pass or something. We create the 2v1 or 3v1 that we designed our play to be, and then our accuracy of our pass is poor. So that's why that skill set in itself is really important. Create or preserve the space in the tackle line just before reaching it. That is really into the opposition faces. Can I step late to make the defender react and create space for a trail runner or a second line of attack coming through? That is just identifying it and putting the ball into that space. So if the initial space is in the wider channels, if the initial space is in the wider channels, how can we attack there? Through the gap, use of the support players to continue the attack. Is there some problems hearing me?
Yeah, it's not ideal at the minute. You can try that, Dan. Like, if you want to try that, I haven't actually done it that way before, Robert. But if you want to try turning off your camera and see if that sorts out your voice, maybe.
Okay.
We don't have to look at your face then as well, so that might be helpful.
Is that working better now?
We'll see if that clicks through. Hopefully, if that suggestion works, that'll be fantastic, because it's actually the first time it's done this.
It might be my kids. It might be my kids on all the Wi-Fi's in the house. So okay. I'll try and sort it out.
Look, fingers crossed it works now. So what I'm going to do is, again, this is the first of our clips. So we're going to show about 5 clips here to sort of illustrate some of those key factors, decision-making process, areas of space that we just spoke about. So I'm going to run it through 2 or 3 times from here, and you can take a preference if you've got an attacking pedigree, a defensive pedigree, or a bit of both. Have a look at it from both sides of the ball maybe, and have a think about what you see, and then see if we maybe cover those, and if not, we'd love to hear what your opinions are. So I'm going to play it through a few times. That's at full speed, so I know that might break up for you a little bit. I'm going to put it through at a slower speed now. So again, feel free to look at it from an attacking focus, from a defensive focus, and see what you notice. If you were playing, what would you have done differently? If you're coaching, what would be the first thing you coach on it be? Again, attacking focus, defensive focus, regardless. Okay, straight through. I'll do one more time at a little bit faster pace. So again, right-hand side, line out off the front, 9, 10, 12, 9, 10, out to 13, behind to 12, and out the back. Okay, Dan, do you want to talk us through from an attacking point of view, and we'll see how many points you might have hit on?
Yeah, no. So for me, the important thing on this clip is the positioning of 10 and the work rate of the blind winger. Those are the 2 areas that I would look at. Obviously, the ball comes from 2 in the line out, so you can argue that it's ball from 2 off the top, and Ireland still get it out into the wider channels. But the important thing there is Johnny Sexton, how he holds his feet. Normally, as coaches, we'd like our 10s to, but he's actually holding his feet, allowing the defender to come towards him, and outside channel. And then Keith Olds' work rate, he's inside or just outside the ball at all times. So just have a look at those two guys.
Okay. Again, just let that play through for you, defensive focus. So just as we come back, like Dan said, the big thing if I'm coaching this defensively is, it's actually broke up when Dan was saying it there, but if the ball gets off 2 and we can allow 10 to take that many steps and distribute, we have to look at ourselves defensively and wonder if we were aligned correctly. So there's one good thing. So from a tail gunner perspective, so tail gunner being the back man in our lineout defensively, the last man in the lineout. So that's our tight head prop. Chases really aggressively on 10. Just if I was paying attention to that again, I was looking at this from the attack point of view, I'll be looking at this seam here. So tail gunner shoots really aggressively, take onto the inside shoulder at 10, which is what we want to see. As much inside pressure onto 10 as we can apply, the better. Anyone who's played 10 will know getting chased hard on the inside puts your skill set under pressure. You have to distribute or kick or carry, and you can't cut back inside. So putting that hard inside pressure on 10 is really effective, but it doesn't match up or marry up with our frontline defense. So one thing that was picked up on last week was Australia defend with their 10 in the 5. So I know that's 2 numbers in a row. They're out half in the 5 and they play 7 at 10. So you can think about maybe why that might be happening. So you could be trying to get your best tacklers on the ball is one thing. So if I've got a really good aggressive 7 and he's not in the line out, can I use him to defend in the back line? If I've got a really good boot, i.e. my 10, and I'm expecting to get kicked to, well, then can I put him somewhere else to bring him into play if we get the ball back? So it's a good consideration we look on later on as how you change personnel around. But overall, the big thing I'd focus on here is we all talk about getting off the line really hard and getting off aggressively and pressuring the 10 or pressuring the 12. If our line out defense off the back of the set piece and our first line defense isn't married up, that's where we get these issues here. So Ireland could have easily cut back in and attacked that seam. Look at the laziness of the Australian 9 who doesn't plug the hole. Other than that, though, you can talk about it until the cows come home, but it's a good read by Folau to come up and shut. But ultimately, if 7, 12, 13 had been up at the same rate as 7, the ball wouldn't have gotten there. So Ireland attacked really well. Dan would probably agree they do well to get it out the back. But Australia leave themselves that one man short because they stack narrow to press and they just don't connect up. But ultimately, it's good attack, Dan. I think you'd agree.
Yeah, no. And again, I'm always referring back to the key factors. So all the players, the adequate depth and width, all the players, you can see as the ball is about Sexton getting it, Bundiaki still haven't moved on the first phase. So they really last pass, committing 2 defenders and Olds then just playing off his shoulder.
100%.
And we create the 2-1 on the outside.
Second clip again from the same game. Okay, just flipping it around to look at Australia's attack and Ireland's defence. The same game. I'll play it again at the same rate, just dragging it through nice and slowly. There's a few things to look at here. So maybe a few prompters would be the time of running from Australia and the defensive policy from Ireland would be 2 things to look at. So go back again, maybe look at from the attacking side, the timings of the runnings from Australia and the defensive policy for Ireland. What do you think? Again, we'd be happy to get your thoughts if you have them.
Just have a look at the effectiveness of each of the attacking players in those pictures there, or the still pictures that Joe says there. Everybody's animated. Everybody in that frame can get the ball. Ends up having no influence as he overrun, and that makes Ireland check their defense. In that picture, we probably have a 6v4 as what I spoke about. And then Folau overrunning a 6v4. You want to make a 5v3. Folau overshooting, the chance then to defend on the outside.
Okay, so again, that comes back to our core principles again. It's the lack of good timing. This is one thing I'm going to illustrate now. It'll come up later about backline defense. So it's easy to look at this and go, Earl's shot up early, he created a 1v2. It's a point to maybe consider defensive policy. So Ireland's defensive policy here is really clear. You got winger taking second last man, fullback closes the gate aggressively, but as well, if you choose to have that fullback has last man policy, think about the secondary roles of your centers. So look at Henshaw there at 13. how he plugs the hole when Earls goes. So still square, Earls goes to shut, and then Henshaw into this space to cover, and it's just trying to trap that threat on the touchline then. So again, it's easy to judge players and go, why did we shoot? That's a policy thing. So maybe to have a think about, okay, when teams get the ball wide against us, what's the role of our winger? What's the role of our fullback? And then what do the centers have as a secondary role? So just again, a small point, I'll reiterate it later, so I won't go into too much detail, just to consider when the ball gets out to that 15, how do the centers and the back threes interact? This is one, again, there's actually a lot you could talk about here, but Dan, I'm just going to play it through as usual. A slightly harder one to decipher, but interesting.
I like the Johnny Sexton comment there on the chat.
So once through, I'll do it again. So again, you can look at this see if you can vindicate that defensive principle I spoke about. See if you can see that coming into the process again. From an attacking perspective, what could be done differently?
For me, in this clip, it's about who's your decision maker. As we said early doors, is your decision maker your 10, 12, or 13? So obviously, England here decide that 12 is their decision maker in this instance. Is he going to bring May into play, or what is he going to do? So everybody being aware of that, and then make the right. But poor decision by the player, or is it a problem in the design of our first phase attack?
Okay. Dan gave us his best robot impression there. Hopefully it clears up for you, Dan, because it's getting it's pretty bad there now. But look, I'll go through. I'm not going to talk too much on this because I just want to re-illustrate what we just spoke about in terms of policy. Again, consistency of policy from Ireland. Check their feet. Fullback takes last man. Winger is the license to shoot. The only thing I will say is just have a think here about the hip position of the attack. So if I'm coaching defenders to defend an attack, whether it's they're attacking passively, they're attacking aggressively towards the line, you can take so much cueing off the hips of an attacker. So it's the same when we talk about line out. Are his hips facing in like he's going to jump? Are his hips facing into the line like he might lift? You can read so much about an attacker from his hips. So how quickly England turn their hips out, there's no threat to come back on the inside from 14 because he's not squaring up. So at that point there, you've got to think about how do our roles change? As soon as England start to attack laterally, can we defend more laterally? Can we get one further channel out and just snuff out that attack before it gets out there? It's poor attack, we'd probably say. If the ball goes, as Dan would probably agree, if that ball goes and it's passed, you've got a 1v1. And from a backline coaching point of view, one thing I found when I was coaching backline was you can get caught up in running your strike plays, running your moves, running your 3v2s, but getting your guys confident in 1v1s is so important. If you as a player are confident in a 1v1, the amount of times in a game you're going to be able to make extra yards, whether it's in close quarters, whether it's in the 15, you're going to have a lot more confidence to play. You're going to get more space. You're going to keep us on the front foot. So that's a good illustration there that if the ball goes and you were on the wing for that 1v1, do you feel like you'd have the skill set to beat that player? Or do you feel like your players would have the skill set or have the range of skills to beat that player? So that's just one small thing. This is from the same game, and I think it would make everyone cringe, but it would make the English smile a little bit, but thankfully that's not it. So have a look here, just the alignment. Dan speaks a lot about alignment and about the threats we pose. Again, from a defensive perspective, have a look at how well England are set up. I'll put it through once. And now license can probably be given for it being the 72nd minute of the game. That's fair enough. But again, there's a few points that we want to look at here. From the perspective of the attack, the defense, I'll just start off by saying we can agree it's immense. Just look at how well they get loaded up. Look at the consistency of the footwork from the England defense. So that comes back to policy. So if we're coaching our defense, do we align off a certain shoulder? Do we align off a certain foot? England policy there clearly looking to defend outside foot forward. that's a real good image to illustrate it. So consideration for us, how do we align defensively? Do we align outside shoulder? Do we align square? And then who goes? So it's clear forward's going to go, defenders inside and outside plugging the hole there. So if Ireland try to play Aki, with forward's got cover on his outside. If Burns shoots back onto the inside, the minus in defence is going to catch him up. Dan, attacking wise here, you would have done things differently.
Yeah, no, for me, it's always a couple of things there. For me, it's a numbers game. Do we have more attack? Out of a coaching point of view, I do think we're too fixated about field position. If we have if we in our own 22 and versus 3 defenders, we normally kick the ball where that's a chance to run it. And then in this situation, we're in the opposition 22 and they 7 or 8 defenders and we only 5 attackers, then we look to run it. So for me, the option here should have been probably the crossfield kick to Olds, because England is quite narrow. And then the other thing is, I always would like to have a inside and an outside option and play that in the moment. And I think that's lacking here for Ireland. If Stockdale stayed on the inside, I think they probably could have got gain line.
Absolutely. And again, you can give a bit of license for the fact that you're quite late in the game, you're a few scores behind. But again, this is where we got to check ourselves and say, decision-making wise, were we at all consistent? This is just another small clip. This is a really good example. It's not best practice because nothing in rugby is ever best practice, but it's a good example of good attack and good defense. It's a really good, so from an attacking point of view, there's great pace onto the ball. There's great angles of running and support lines. And defensively, the connectivity is really, really high. So I'm going to go through it nice and slowly again. So again, like I said, I encourage you out before we say it, because God knows we love to talk. So before we say it, even if you have 1 point on defense and attack that you notice, what are the things? So from an attacking perspective, even what key factor is really evident and what key factors done really well? Defensively, what they do really well. I'll go through nice and slowly before I bring you in again, Dan. So again, I'll talk about defense, because from a defense point of view, you do quite well. What do you see in an attack, Dan?
The initial alignment, I think, again, a lot of guys that can get the ball. If you look there, again, probably playing off the midfield. Defenders, 9 could have probably worked a little bit further forward to commit the Leinster 9. And then because the Leinster 9 is chasing really hard, one of the Toulouse players move could have just reacted in the moment and came on a switch. But for me, the actual alignment, touchline offering us the kick pass straight away, and then the 3 guys in the midfield being really good at.
Good. Okay, and again, I'll try, not almost saying I usually have to translate for Dan because it's South African accent, but I'll try and translate him through the robot impression. But like from an attacking perspective, like Dan said, the alignment's really good, the pace onto the ball and the options offered. If I flip this to a defensive focus, I'm concerned. And you can kind of see that picture. If I'm defending at 10 or 12, I'm concerned for multiple reasons. 10 can attack me. He can shoot back on the inside with 9 as an inside runner. 10 can play 12 or 13 flat. So if the Leinster 13 gets too excited here, 13 can just check his run and come back on the inside. We can play straight out the back to Gio Aplon coming on is that Colby? Sorry. Colby coming on arc line out the back. There's a kick pass option the whole way through and there's numbers out the back. So I'm worried defensively. What impresses me from a defensive point of view is we look at the principles of defense. Connectivity is a big one. So how connected are we, not just on the line, but can we hold our connectivity going forward? So if we're practicing backline defense from the training point of view, getting used to actually coming up, opening our hips and staying connected is really good, is really important rather. And it's a good image of it here. So Sexton can't afford to drift early because 12 can come on a late switch. So he has to stay on 10. But as they buy time, just look at the footwork of 10, 12, 13 on Leinster. I could take a steel rod now, like you talk about in scrummaging, I could put a steel rod through the hips of those 3 defenders and it would be dead straight. The connectivity is really, really strong. So when we're attacked into wide channels and we have to scramble, staying connected and trying to keep universal spaces across is really important. And Lance, you do it really well here. Just look at how in sync everyone is 12, 13, 14. So understanding that if we all turn our hips, if one turns our hips out, we all have to turn our hips out. If 13 starts to course correct back, so you watch Ringrose here, course corrects, gets his hip square, 14 reacts to that, gets his hip square. So if we kind of get that miscommunication, one gets square, one drifts, that's where we lose that connectivity. So this is a really good example. We've got to have clear principles. If the ball gets to the 15, we buy time, we all buy time. If 13 comes square, we all come square. It's a good example to show that. Those are a few clips, and again, like you said.
And again, sorry, Joe, for me there, back to the very start, we want to score. We didn't score. We want to get over the gain line. We managed to do that, and we beat the tackle line. So for me, that was successful outcome in attack.
Absolutely. So anyway, we hope the video so far sort of given you a real practical thing to apply the jargon and the words to. And again, if you have any questions or challenges, feel free to flick them to Sam. I know he'll jump in. This is just something to consider. This is probably for playmakers, decision makers, and from a play point of view, these are really important, not just for drawing up our backline attack or our backline defensive principles, but also deciding our option and deciding our play on the pitch. So Dan, do you want to just talk us through that, and hopefully no robot impression?
Yeah, I know. Geez, it's never been like this. But as I say, I blame the kids for the devices. But linear space is the one we spoke about, and a lot of coaches, I think it's really important that we understand that whether you coach youths or whether you coach adults, is that space between scrum and line out. And then with that as well is the side of the scrum, on which side is the scrum off part of the defensive line, and on which side is he not. Do you play the same play of a left-hand scrum and of a line out? Do you play the same play of a left-hand scrum and a right-hand scrum? So I think you can challenge yourself a little bit in that. And what's the role? Say you do play the same play of scrum and line out. What's going to have to differ is probably the way that your 10 takes it to the line or your 12 takes it to the line, because there's more space available to engage those defenders. Line out tail gunner versus open side flanker. In attack, who's defending at the back of the line out? And I think France exploited Ireland really well in that, where they realized Herring was defending at the back of the line out, a hooker. And they really attacked into that space. Billy Burns was playing probably not as good a defender as Sexton, and they really came hard off and got a lot of momentum in that area. So your line-out tail gunner, is it your 9? South Africa used Faf de Klerk because they really want to put pressure on the opposition 10. Is it a hooker? And how is that going to influence your attack? Or do you just always call the same play? Or so for me, it's important to have a look at that. Open side flanker, a lot of defensive coaches will say, or attack coaches will say, my 10 needs to stand far away so that the 7 can't get to him. My point in that has always been, if the 10 stands so far away from the 9 to get their 7 out of play, their 13, the defensive 13 is actually going to be more in play, because the time the ball is in the air, their 13 will run 4 yards. So I'm a big believer in 10 standing close and getting the ball in their hands early. The earlier they, before the 10 has got the ball in his hands, defenders don't have to make a decision. As soon as a 10 has the ball in his hands and guys are running angles off him, now defenders must make decisions. Transition zone, speed of connection. Joe spoke about that. At the back of the line out, the connection between that hooker or scrum half and the 10. Can we play flat off a line out with the inside ball to the blind winger? Could that be an option? The same off scrum. How can we manipulate spacing, one side versus 2 sides? Of scrums, we've got 2 sides to attack. Of lineouts, we only have 1 side. Lateral spacing, lineout versus scrum. There's more guys maybe in a back line, especially if you do short lineouts. So How's that going to affect your backline attack? Or are you a coach again, just give it to the forwards, crash it up, and we get our game going? Role of the 9 and role of the hooker in defense, and then shortened lineouts, as I've discussed there. So a lot of variance there at the start. Sorry, you're losing me again.
No, you actually made it the whole way through that there. So we'll keep.
Okay.
I'm not going to touch wood on that one and keep my fingers
No,
crossed.
but so for me, it's that decision. Don't watch a Super Rugby game on the weekend and geez, the Brumbies did a sexy play. I'm going to do that with my under-16s on the weekend. It's not going to work. Okay, so design your play around those and try and develop decision makers in your 10, 12, 13 to be able to see that or have a look for those keys in the defensive line.
100%. And again, you can get caught up.
Can I just
get caught up on these? Yeah, sorry, Sam.
Can I just jump in on a question? There's a few coaches here that I'm probably asking the same question myself. What do you do to develop decision makers if you've only got them Tuesday, Thursday, or just a Saturday? Like, what instances can you do to best prepare them for that, rather than just going through the motions and doing strike moves for half an hour? What can you do to develop decision makers, or what do you do within the academy? Would be quite good to know.
I'm never unopposed coach. There'll always be opposed, whether that's you as a coach being that defender and shooting at 10 and drifting late to 12 or whatever the case may be, or starting at 10 and drifting off, and what you find is 10 will just play the play as it happens. But I don't think we have to train full backline to improve our backline play. I'm a big believer in, okay, only 5 guys have pitched up tonight for our backline. What does most coaches do? We play a lot of 4v1, 3v2 scenarios where me as a coach can jump into the defensive line. I can defend at 10. The other defender defends at 12. I tell him to stay back. I rush up and just challenge your guys in front of you the whole time. The biggest concern that I always have is 10s. They think they're the playmakers, and that's why I like to call them decision makers, because they want to play the play instead of making the decision of what's in front of them and where does the defenders go. So I think to answer your question, there's a lot of 5v3s, 4v2s, those sort of scenarios of scrums. The outside backs probably don't need, outside backs can act as defenders and just play around with that. Okay, now we're going hard, now we're going soft, now you go up, I stay back, to try and develop that decision making in the moment.
And I mean, Dan's answered it probably as well as anyone, but one thing that in a real practical sense, is questioning for understanding in decision making is so important. So we can tell guys, okay, you could have hit 13 on that player, you could have played out the back. Questioning decision makers, or questioning potential decision makers on what they saw, what decision they made, what other decision they could have made, really reinforces that process. So when I started coaching first, I used to write down lists of questions about certain areas of play, because if I didn't know how to question someone, probably I'd get an earful from Dan. So I'd have a list of questions, even from a backline attack point of view. So I'd say to a 10, what decision did you make? What was the opposition 13 doing? Where was the opposition 7? Was there any space in the backfield? Would you do it differently? Making real clear questions that will reinforce the message you're trying to get across. We'll just connect that with them. So I think Dan will agree there. The questioning approach is really important for decision making.
Definitely, but something that creates a bit of laughs between players, but it actually gets them realizing as well, I've got to improve my decision making, is simple scrum on the right hand side. You've got your scrum off, fly off, and 2 centers, and you play a simple switch play. I'm just saying, if you only have 6 guys at training, so that's your 4 attackers. You put 2 guys in defense, and the 10 must make the decision. He must go himself, he must switch, or he must pop to the 13. And then as he starts playing, you actually tell one of the players to sit down, and he doesn't go up at all. And the amount of times with youth players under 16s, 17s, and so on, where the 10 can't get it because he's so used to doing the switch or doing the dummy switch pop, that he doesn't even have a look, or he doesn't even engage the defenders in front of him. So I think play around a lot with those type of scenarios.
100%. Reduce work stuff, and there's actually some reduced work stuff up here. We'll fly through these slides, and Dan, I'll just bomb through them if that's all right. These are just easy ways to really, and I'll question you on one, to maybe think slightly outside the box, because one thing that we often don't consider is, I've had relationships with our coaches where I'll go off and do some backline attack, forwards do their line out, and then we say, we're going to do 5 mans, but we're going to do 7 mans, but I plan for 5 mans or 2 extra, or I plan for 7 mans, forwards want to do 5 mans. So integration between that is important, but understanding how we can maybe mess around with things is good as well. So 5-man line out, blue team attacking, have a look at how you can change personnel around. So clip here, 12 playing 10 out the back. I might get you to explain why in a second, Dan, but this is where we mess around with personnel. So again, just because your 10 is playing 10 doesn't mean he has to be first receiver. So 12 goes into first receiver, plays out the back to 10 to get him into space. So just think about the difference in linear space. So 12 catches the ball here, the linear space he has between his attacker. When the actual 10 gets the ball here, he's got double the linear space that he had before. So we're getting that guy into a position where he can have more space to play with, giving him options, like Dan said, option on his inside, option on his outside. Again, if 15 was earlier, you could be talking about a line break. But Dan, you might want to briefly explain, I've probably touched on it there, but it's really about manipulating space for our stronger players.
It's getting your best players in space, and we probably identified against this red team that we played at they defend quite narrow. Obviously, our outside backs alignment were poor, but when the 10 gets the ball there, if the rest of the backs alignment is good, then we would have been successful in that attack. So using your 12 up, most sides, if you use your 12 as a 10, what are they going to think? They're going to think he's going to crash up, or he's going to play the 2 forwards on his left hand side. So play around with trying to get your best passes, delivering the passes, because again, I fully realize that at youth level especially, everybody is not as good a passer as they probably will develop into be. So get your best players on the ball as much as you can.
This is another example of that, Dan. I might just leave it with you. Same example of getting the best players in the best position.
This one, we start actually with our 10. He's throwing the ball into the scrum. Our 9 is at 10 at this stage, because again, move is designed to create that, to attack that outside space. There's big space between the 2 centers, but outside space is where we identified, and we wanted to get our 10, who's now at 9, into space to because he's quite a dangerous player. So go ahead. He gets the ball, and if again, what we said about Falau earlier, we basically created a 4v2 there. Poor alignment by one player, or he's too early. So 10 gets the ball there. The player on his outside is too early. If he held his feet, we had a 3-on-1 on the outside. Happy days.
Again, creating opportunities is great, and the execution that Dan said at the start, that's one thing work with a lot of backline coaches, do a lot of strike plays and even oppose, but if our catch pass doesn't get us there and we don't know how to hold our feet, we're in trouble. So like Dan said, that 13 held his feet, didn't overrun the ball, or even if we managed to get the offload away, if we got it away there earlier, it's a 2v0 on the
so
edge.
In video review, we'll reflect back to the key factors that we had just now and concentrate on that adequate depth and width.
This is just a really, really quick example, just in terms of how we can use angles of running and the extra forwards in a 5-man. So 5-man line out shortened, opposition 22, using a +1 and just really jamming forwards aggressively in. And just, I'll say it again, like the speed of ball is going to influence it, but from defensive focus, just look at how many of those red players are looking at the ruck and aren't square. So if that ball gets away to the open side now, we're going to be in business. There's no one folding around the corner. So think about the effect of your strike play on the line out, on the forwards in the line out. So philosophy on that play is to jam all these forwards from the line out inside the 15. So you're creating the whole rest of the pitch then to attack with your backs. So if that ball's a little bit quicker, we played a 10 earlier, we're probably in the corner there. So have a think about the influence.
I think the two backline players could have been more animated out the back. They probably switched off. If they were looking like they were going to get the ball again, that could have created space. But again, just back to using your personnel, we used our scrum half, who's a Korean fella, to throw the ball into the line out because he was the best. So he threw the ball into the line out, got it back, and go again. So don't be fixated on your 9 or your hooker has to throwing the ball in the line out or whatever. Get your best players to do certain things.
We'll just look at a few more, and then Sam, you tell me when you want me to stop here. This is one that you're a big fan of, Dan, that maybe wasn't executed properly. But it's a really good example of defensive best practice. But similar to the ones we just looked at, it's good play, bad timing. And this just really illustrates the importance of, and this is something that coaching our backlines, is understanding what good timing looks like. So what does good timing do to a defense, or what does good timing do to the speed of the ball? So Dan, I'll play it through once.
And don't just do the move because that is the move. Have the move or have the setup, and within that setup, you rely on your decision making to be good. So if you stop it there, Joe, sorry, just as 9 pass, just there. What situation do we have there in attack? Show our fingers. How many attackers versus how many defenders? 6 attackers. How many defenders? 3. You can argue 4 with Faf de Klerk working, but probably a 6v3 situation. My point is, if you do 6v3 situation in drill format every Tuesday and Thursday, what do you expect the success rate to be as a coach? Probably quite high. Okay. So in a game situation, we probably need to do the same. Faf de Klerk really chases hard here. So for me, the player holding his feet, if he comes in on a switch line again, the move can probably be more effective. But I realize as well that this is the play that they wanted to play. Even there, getting the second receiver, getting the ball, we still have 4v3. And now just a poor pass that allows Willie Leroux to close the gate. So although initially we created a 6v3, 2 players not animated enough makes the defense in control.
And again, this is I don't know if it's a worldwide thing or just a Dublin thing. Our talented backs love a skip pass, and it's a consistent thing. They love to skip pass and get the ball to the wing, and it's probably something Dan has just brushed across before. Defensively, when I see a skip pass, I'm delighted, because the longer the ball is in the air, the more time I have to shut the gate and close down attackers. The longer a pass is, the more time it gives me as a defender, and it gives me more surety that I can go. No one can interact with the ball while it's in the air going to the next receiver. So if I know the destination is that next attacker on the wing, like Diolanda does here, I can just slam the gate and be really aggressive. So yeah, Dan.
So yeah, sorry, just on this one again. So we go back to the key factors. Our initial alignment, we created opportunity, and then with our effectiveness of our running lines or preserving the space for the next players, we didn't achieve in that. So that will be the work on then in the next training session. Put players into that situation 10, 15 times and see can they execute.
Sam, do you want to hold here and see if there's questions? You want to keep going? You let me know. I've got a Sam, but I've got no vocals. I can see a lot of lips moving. Still got a lot of lips moving. I'm still not hearing anything. You think he's done enough Zoom?
I've had a disaster. I've just kept
there
talking.
We go.
Absolute nightmare. What an idiot. And I've got it recorded as well. Superb stuff. Hoggy, do you want to ask this question, or do you want me to answer it since it's yourself? I can unmute you.
I'm quite happy to ask it. You've looked and shown us a lot about backs play, but at grassroots level, skill levels vary significantly between players very much at the same age group. So how much time do you spend focusing on basics, catch, pass and run, compared to running through sort of backs plays and back play scenarios? And what do you do if you've got a weaker player in that back line that isn't up to skill level
You happy to take that, Dan?
Yeah, I heard, again, it's my connection. I probably heard half of it, but Sarah, I'm a big believer in catch pass skills. So we'll practice it a lot, but I do believe in players actually get bought. So I'll concentrate a lot on catch pass, but always have some sort of decision-making process in it, whether it is distance. So if you have unopposed passing skill, your cones might be 6 yards apart. I'll make it 8 yards apart or 10 yards apart, so you can challenge players in that way. And even the space before they pass to the next player, so the lateral distance being, say, 6 to 12 yards, and running forwards when they have to pass, to teach them how to hold their feet, and all of that might also be starting at 6, moving down to 4, moving down to 2 meters, that they can still be attacking the ball at pace, but in control of their feet. But I'm a big believer in catch pass because, as we say, it's okay to create opportunity, but then our pass execution is actually what's going to make us a successful backline or not.
And I think to kind of cover the second point as well, on when we have maybe big differences in skill, and trust me, being there, done that, still doing it, regardless of level, there's always going to be that difference. Myself and Dan, or probably even myself, would be big believers in progression. So can we have one activity that starts at a foundation level, and then we have our progressions, and we can move through that depending on the competency of the player. So if we have, like Dan said, we have 4 cones 4 yards apart, then we have another set of cones that have 6 yards apart, another set with 8 yards apart. We start at the 4, go to 6, then go to 8. And if we're progressing through as a group, then that's where we can go, okay, one thing we do all the time is number them 1, 2, 3, 4. And we go, right, 1, 2, 3, 4 across. Then we say, right, this time we're going to go 1, 2, 1, 3, 4. So the player goes, okay, how does that work? I'm going to have to play him and I'm going to have to loop him. So you can build in the fundamentals of running lines and backline attack, like running hard lines, running switches, running loops. You can build them into just simple catch pass activities. And then when you get into the game, then you get into that game situation. You know, if guys know how to catch pass, they know how to switch, they know how to loop, they know how to run a hard line, they can actually work that out as they go. So building in through progression is just an easy way to get into it for me.
Joe, just a couple of things on there as well. Don't always think as a coach as well as just about progression. You know, we must think about regression as well. So start with difficult, and then if they can't get it, we can regress to make it easier. But catch pass, there's lots of different variations, a lot of games. Simple touch game. If a player that's weak off his right hand side, if he turns around, say he must play scrum half, and he turns around when he passes, immediate turnover. And try and work into your training, maybe through the senior players or the better passers in your team, 5 minutes before training or 5 minutes after training. It's a work on block, and let players take, even if a 16-year-old, your best 16-year-old passer, let him take that 5 minutes to improve the passing of the weaker players in the side. And that creates a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for, but making players responsible for each other rather than you as the coach.
Hopefully that answers anyway, sir. Sam, are there more there? Do you want us to kick on? Do you want us to hold it?
That's all so far that's come through in the chat. We can easily wait for a bit. I don't know if anybody's got any questions on that there, if they want to unmute themselves, or they've got anything they want to challenge or bring up that they've maybe sparked a thought. More than happy for a question. Seems people are just enjoying your dulcet Irish tones, gents, if I'm being honest with you, or South African tone as well.
I would definitely, just saying on that, because Sarah, definitely design a 20-minute backline like we all, I don't know how it works with you guys, but probably Tuesday night is team night, you know, and a lot of tactical training games and so on, 15 versus 15 or however many you have, or small-sided games and so on. And then Thursday night, there'll always be sort of a 20-minute split or so on. But in that 20-minute split, I think take one of those aspects on a Tuesday night or Thursday night, whether that's running correct angles or appropriate width and depth or accuracy of pass, and focus for 10 minutes just on that key factor of backline attack, rather than try and do everything the one night, and that's the same with catch pass. I would break catch pass down into its key factors as well. Okay, I don't care how the ball gets to the next person, but all I want you to work on tonight is early catch. The earlier you can catch it, the more time you're going to have on the ball. The next night, okay, I don't care how you catch it, but we're just going to focus on having our hips square. So for 5 minutes here, we're just going to work on getting our hips square and take each key factor and coach that key factor rather than coach the whole skill.
Yeah, fantastic. What we might do, Sam, is we could go for like 10 or so minutes more, and then if there's final questions, we'll take them. If that suits, and we'll wrap up then. That work? Yeah, cool. Look, we'll finish this off, because I think we'll probably get to the same place, Dan, because there's a few slides here that I actually do want to share, this and the formations and the clip from the start. So maybe we'll get through those.
Yeah, so for me, it's all about rugby. For me, is simple game. It's a numbers game. So how can we do we have ordinary math, or did we pass math, or whatever, to be able to count 6v4, 5v3, or that? And then alignment before possession. So I'm aligned a certain way before I get the ball. Accelerate, and then it's accelerate onto the ball, attack space to manipulate the defender. And that might be, a lot of coaches believe, if I can explain it, a lot of coaches believe run at the inside shoulder of the defender. But I'm a believer, run at the outside shoulder of the defender. I'm attacking towards his inside shoulder, but as I catch the ball, I square up, and as I pass, I move to his outside shoulder. And the reason for that is so that he can't drift in defense. So I keep him quite honest. If I attack his inside shoulder and I pass too early, or I pass off 1 foot, he can drift off. So personally, I'm a believer in that. So for me, attack space to manipulate the defender, I'll work onto his outside shoulder. The same as when 10s, there's a lot of coaches on switch plays that want the 10 to go forward first, go 2 yards forward, and then work across. The time that takes, the opposition has run 4 meters and closing that linear space again. So if we want to do a switch play, I'm telling my 10, you go straight at the opposition 12, straight away. And more often than not, that 10 chases him because he's not sure if the 12 is going to get the guy. So targeting a shoulder or a space. So inside all in multi-purpose position. And this is probably for fly-offs, for everybody, back 3 players, so that we can always be in a position where we can pass, run, or kick. So I'm a big believer in ball in 2 hands. I won't play any game without having that as a constraint. If you don't have the ball in 2 hands, it's a turnover. Doesn't matter if you made a line break or whatever, to get into that habit, because if I have the ball in 2 hands, I can pass left or right. If I have it in 1 hand, I can only carry. If I have it in 2 hands, I can carry, I can pass, I can kick, and so on. So that will be the main reason for that. But in those sort of areas.
Fantastic. This is the one that always sparks a bit of interest, Dan, because there are plays that we both run, but you just wanted to talk this sort of an illustration of what we mean by our alignment before possession as well. So alignment before possession, when we change that's when we look at formations.
Look, I love playing around with this, and I would challenge coaches again and asking you guys, change either your personnel or how many times have you changed your. So there's a lot of different formations that you can use. On the first one, if you align like that to the opposition, what do you think the opposition is going to think, the defensive side? Are you going to look to penetrate as attackers, or are you going to play wide? And most defensive sides will think you're going to come through the middle. So, but as soon as 9 works towards the outside, so they line up like that, what you find is the fence come more narrow, and then you attack on the outside. Second one, where everybody's in one flat line, similar. All you need to teach the guys is how to hold their feet, and you almost play a double screen. 11 runs hard, 10 gets the ball out the back, 13 runs hard, 12 gets the ball out the back, and you're into space. And it's not pre-planned, because again, if 10 gets the ball behind 11 and 13 runs hard and his defender shift off, you must give him the ball. So back to Sam's, how do I practice that decision making against opposition? And then the other one, the 3-2-1 setup, that's going to challenge people as well. But one thing that I always would encourage is I always like a flat winger on first face, open side winger, to be flat in. He can delay his run, but by him standing flat, kick pass is in play straight away. Probably think and change his positioning. And then I'm not a big believer flat and engage, depending if we want to penetrate or go wide. Personally, my belief is if we want to go through the middle, so we want to penetrate, our alignment should be wide. If we want to attack them wide, our alignment should be narrow.
Absolutely. So there's 2 more clips just after this, and I think we'll finish on those. That actually gets us to just where we usually about finish. But I'll just advocate for those, like Dan said. I ran almost exclusively, used to call that first one a 33. I used to run that almost exclusively with a women's team last year. And you have your formation, the way that you can change your angles of running there. And this comes back to the simplistic things. If we understand how to hold our feet, when to accelerate, when to change angle, think of how many different pictures you can create for that 33. And a good thing I will illustrate as well is when we do get back on the pitch, we're probably a long way off over here, especially. But when you do get on, you're trying to illustrate the effect of plays. You're trying to get your attackers and your backline attackers to understand the effect that their angle has. I just stand where a 12 would be and record it on a phone or on an iPad and show them and say, okay, this time you went lateral straight away, so I wasn't concerned. Okay, this time now you're running towards me. I'm looking at this guy. I'm looking at your hips, and I'm worried about you as an attacker. So just using, most of us carry a phone with us out onto the pitch. When we're coaching back on attack, back on defense, stand behind, stand in front, and just illustrate what we're seeing. Illustrate and show them.
Look on that. Yeah.
Yes, Dan?
No, you're absolutely right. Sorry, Joe. But if you look at defense in that, most sides will defend there because they'll have a 15 in the backfield and they have a 14 behind the scrum. So you can play any play running those lines.
Absolutely. So we'll look at the last 2 clips, and then so if anyone has any questions pending, now's a good time to maybe throw them across to Sam or get them ready. But these are the 2 clips we'll finish on. Myself and Dan could talk about midfield scrums till the cows come home. But if you might have heard, I know we probably hear a lot more of the Irish media, but Brian O'Driscoll talking during the week about if you get an opportunity for a midfield scrum between the 10s, it's one of the best places to attack from on the pitch, because not only do you split defenders, but you challenge backfield. The backfield have to consider long kicks, cross-field kicks, deep kicks, chip kicks. So a good opportunity to challenge yourself as a coach or a player is to consider a lot of midfield scrums in this zone and how you would attack or how you would defend. But I'll play it through slowly. It's a good example of how we could maybe do things differently on both sides of the ball.
What picture do you see there?
But this actually comes back to your earlier point, Dan.
Yeah. So in that situation, it's a 3v2. Johnny Sexton, poor pass decision. If that ball goes to Bundiaki, it's a simple 2v1. So one of my beliefs as well would be a 5v3, try and make it a 4v2, a 4v2, try and make it a 3v1, or 3v2, try and make it a 2v1, rather than throw a skip pass. I think just try and have that thought process of, and for me there, Hello?
Yeah, we have you now. Sorry, we lost you there.
Sorry, Sam muted me.
I know, I didn't mean to. I'm having a nightmare tonight.
The host muted me. No, but what I'm saying is there is a 3v. I don't know what you could have heard or not, but for me, that's a perfect 3v2 if Johnny Sexton just give it to Bundiaki there. But he decides to skip, and that brings the defender back into play.
So easy example of, and again, you know, we had a conversation recently about when you've got a lot of opinionated players. It depends on the levels as you work your way up, and guys are playing for longer. And you have opinionated players and the way you do things. You know, taking screenshots or screen grabs from international games or club games, Premiership games, and saying, look, this is why we do 3v2s. This is why we do 2v1s. This is why we practice our decision making, because it comes up so often. I mean, the good thing I would say here, it's a 2-2 split. So again, you know, technically speaking, 2-2 split. 9 chases really well onto Sexton. Sexton engages. But again, this is where we talk about he did really well at holding his feet before. He attacks on really well. But this is where we talk about one of the big skills that often goes amiss. And I know you did an S&C webinar, so I don't know if it was covered, but deceleration with the ball. So we talk about guys accelerating onto the ball. How often do we practice decelerating with the ball? So if Sexton can accelerate on, chop his feet up and play Aki there, like Dan said, he's through. So if he has the ability to check his feet up and play, that's a line break. But the defenders do really well. It's the one clip I wanted to show from a defensive point of view, especially, is how square the defender keeps his hips. So if Sexton does pop early, 12 can drift and attack Aki on the or defend Aki on the inside shoulder. Folau is positioned well, but he's really late. Just back here, he's really late. So again, this comes back to policy. If you're going to say fullback has last man, you're going to have to get your fullbacks used to working really, really hard, because they're going to have to work to both sides of the scrum. This is the last thing we'll look at, Dan, is just these two pictures, because this is what you spoke about in terms of...
Yeah, and I think you can do this off from as well. But this is, for me, you know, if you can take a picture of this, I think it will help you a lot in the sense of the depth of your 10 and the width of your 10 of a line out. You know, does he always stand at the same place? Or if the ball, say he has his initial stance like there, suddenly if the ball gets thrown at 2, he needs to move closer to the line out. As the ball goes in, he needs to move closer. If the ball goes to 7 in the line out, he can go wider. Play flatter, the further off the... So if a ball is at 2, he's probably at the 300. If it's at 4, he's at 200. If it's at the back, he's at 100. So he needs to be able to play around with his depth and understand that. And then the squares is that what Joe just said. It's a 3v2 or a 3v2 plus 1 and so on. And if you can show that to players so that they get that realization of, okay, this is our whole picture, is the backline attack. But within that, the 10, 12, and 11, their job is to engage the other 10 and 12. If they manage to do that, then it's game on. The 15 and 13, how do they engage the opposition 13? And that creates then the space on the outside. So however you want to design your micro plays around that, but I think 10's understanding of when to be deep, when to be flat, when to be close, when to be wide, is very important. And that could be based on, as we said right at the start, who's defending at the back of the line out. Do they have a tight head prop there rather than a number 8 as the back lifter? All of those things can bring those things into play.
Perfect. So I'm going to jump out here. We just have, so again, we keep these as backups depending on how fast we go through. So don't worry, we didn't get caught up too early. Those are just the core takeaways. Maybe this is the one thing you might want to, if there's anything you might have missed, or just to sort of reinforce the big thing. So Dan, you might just really quickly run us through those.
Keep it simple. Have your setup, but within that, you've got the word strong is up there, but you have the ability to play 3 ways. Either attack yourself, play left, play right, penetrate, go wide. But have a setup, and within that setup, there's 4 or 5 different options. Let your players understand why and when to attack. Ask them the question. Let your backs, rather than you as a coach say, okay, these are our backline plays for the weekend. Ask your players, what do you think, or what backline plays do you do you believe in? But then challenge them within that in, okay, if we want to play that, who's responsible for who in the defensive line? Because as an attacker, it's important. I don't believe in dummy lines and that sort of stuff, but it's important that you know what your responsibility is. You must hold the defender, whether you get the ball or not. Identify, align, communicate, attack, react. Practice with opposition and reduce skill. If 4 guys turn up, we do a lot of 3v1 or 2v2s. How many times does your fullback and winger get the ball in the 15-meter channel and it's a 2v2 or a 2v1 with the opposition fullback trying to close the gate? Can they play in that situation? Do they know the going to kick a grubber? All of that. So 2v2s for me is a really important skill to train as a backline coach. Manipulate the defense with your alignment and formations. Try it. Try going out there and have 2 guys standing or blind winger standing behind 10, outside center standing behind inside center, 2 wingers standing behind each other, and see how the opposition is going to react. If you're under 16s, train against the under 14s or so on in backline, just try it. Be aware of the implications of linear and lateral space. Just have that awareness of, if I play off scrum, it's different than when I play off line out. If I play from the left-hand side, it's different than when I play from the right-hand side.
Perfect. And I'm going to bomb through these very quickly. There's nothing much else to say, and then we'll see if there's any lingering questions, Sam. But it's really straightforward. You've got to know who's responsible for who. Don't be swayed by, we talk about an attack. Dan said there's no dummy lines, but there are option lines. So just because someone's coming onto the ball at pace doesn't mean that you have to change your role defensively. Swim in your lane, worry about who's in your channel. If my role is done, then I can swim out to the next lane. I can help the next defender out. But understand your role, who you're responsible for. Integrate your backfield manager with your first phase defense. We didn't get to cover much of it, but this gets overlooked all the time. And like Dan said, we might train 3v2, we might train 5v3 when we have reduced numbers for backline. But backfield players understanding, when do I come up to defend on this side? When do I drop back into the backfield? That has a big impact on first phase defense. So think about how you integrate that, and we can take specific questions on those if there are. Understand connection between your mini units. So 7, 9, and 10 in the transition zone between the scrum and the line out. Do they understand what they need to do and what angles to have to run and what their roles are? 10s and centers, when are we going to push early? When do I shift the channel out? 13 and a winger in the wide channel, like the Ireland example. Do I have license to shoot, or does the winger have license to shoot, or do we all stay and try and use the touchline? Short side winger and the fullback. Like I said, if we've got a scrum on the left, ball gets moved wide, 14 has to come up and defend, or 15 has to push up. Where does the 11 go? So every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Is that the phrase? I'm not exactly the brainiac, but if the 15 goes, what impact does that have on 15, on 14 and 11 on our backfield? And ultimately, the last one there, communication and connectivity. If you see me talking about defense, I'll talk all day and all night about hip, square, and connectivity. So as long as we're connected, if we're all doing the same thing, we're not going to go that far wrong. If we all start a bit narrow, but we work together to close a space, we'll be okay. If we all start a little bit too wide, but we're connected and we manage to shut the gate on the inside, we'll be okay. So connectivity and understanding when we're connected and when we're not, talking to each other is really important. So Sam, if there's any lingering questions, we're happy to take them. Or if not, we'll let everyone go and have their cup of tea. Oh, he's done it again.
Done it again. What a nightmare. Absolute disaster. There's nothing in the chat, but I'll open it up for the next minute or two. If anybody does have questions, I've got a couple, but I'll open up to the floor first and foremost.
No worries.
If they want to contact us privately as well via email, or not sure about terminology we used, or be specific in, I'm coaching the under 14s, I only have this much time, or I'm the senior coach, or whatever, please feel free to contact us.
Yeah, there's the details there on screen, so feel free to get in touch, guys. Yeah, there's no real questions.
I love the way Scotland. I love the way Scotland attack, though. You know, off first phase, the awareness that they have of each other. I do think Russell makes a big difference, but the threats that they have all over the park, I think, is exciting, especially our first phase attack.
The one maybe question I had was, a lot of the clips, if not maybe all the clips, showed the attack getting into the 15-metre channel. Now, how much do you think that's good attack, but also an element of defence allowing the attack to be in the 15-metre channel because they want to defend from an edge?
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. And I think, you know, then that it's a total different analysis there, but, you know, you are going to leave, you can't defend everywhere. So it might be a team policy in those clips and so on. Okay, we give them the outside to come hard off the line in the second part of defense. So I think it's more, you know, like policy or based on policy. But again, in backline, there's always going to be space somewhere, either wide, through the middle, or in behind.
Like, and from on that point as well, is sometimes defensively, I think myself and Dan have said it before, and anyone who's familiar with basketball, if you ever heard someone say let him shoot, it's the most humiliating thing you'll ever hear in your life. But it's the same with defense. Let them try and play into that wide channel and see if they have that skill set to execute. So we stay connected. We maybe don't go as hard as we can. Try and force them to put their skill set on show. And that's where we see if they got the skill set to attack us wide, or maybe that means next time you've got to understand when to pull the trigger on things. You know, it's an 80-minute game or 70-minute game, depending on the level. You're going to be going. You can't put 100% line speed on every time, as much as us defensive coaches want to say, you know, full line speed every time. So understand maybe, okay, if 13 is going to be second receiver on this play, I'm going to shoot on him hard next time. Because last time I realized in that set piece defense, he hasn't got the skill set to deal with a push defense or a hammer defense. So understanding and let's look at their skill set, maybe give them the license to try and play wide and be ready to chase them onto the touchline. But really being aware, we talk about this in line-out stuff as well, like feed stuff back. If I'm 10 and the ball gets all the way to the wide channel and I let my 14 and 15 defend the ball, looking for cues on 12 and 13, you know, does he just really have no threat to the line? I can tell my 12 next time, yeah, that 12 is never going to attack you. Or I'm looking at the 11 coming around, yeah, that 11 really doesn't want the ball, so don't worry about the inside threat. So just feeding information back and forth to the guys when your role is done, it's really important.
Yeah, that was a great answer. But no, if there's no other questions, then for Joe and Dan, who I'm really grateful, and obviously a massive thank you for coming on and giving up your time, which was mind-blowing technically. Some of the stuff you guys went into, the detail you went into, was really, really fantastic. So thank you to the pair of you, and I'm sure I echo the thoughts of everybody in the call here. It's good to, you know, get somebody else or two people from different kind of points of view and to have a look at something that maybe we don't normally go into much detail in. So no, thank you very, very much to the pair of you. And if there's no further questions, folks, then feel free to enjoy your wine, beer, tea, coffee, or anything that you will be drinking tonight. Thanks again.
Guys, thank you. Thanks a lot, and sorry for the Wi-Fi problems, but I hope you got something out of it. And please contact us if you want to know anything.
Thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate just having us. You know, look, hopefully we're all about sharing information. So like I said, myself and Dan are happy to talk with anyone directly or answer questions or just give an opinion. So feel free to reach out. Anything we can do for you or anything, we're happy to. Thanks for having us, Sam. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
It's good to have another discussion.
Always, mate.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.